My wife stayed out all night. She waltzed in this morning looking like she'd been dragged backward through a hedge and immediately face-planted into bed. Watching her drift off to sleep with a sickeningly satisfied smirk on her face, I quietly grabbed her phone. I mass-texted a shy emoji to her entire contact list. At first, the replies were totally normal, and I smoothly brushed them off with the classic, "Oops, the toddler mashed the keypad" excuse. But then, one specific reply sent a glacial chill shooting straight up my spine and into my brain. "Did you miss me, darling? The way you played hard to get last night was absolutely captivating." Seeing that, I delivered a brutal kick to my sleeping wife, chucked the phone right at her face, and roared in absolute fury. "Your precious darling just texted you. He said you looked absolutely captivating last night." Even with Seraphina's usually unbreakable psychological defenses, getting caught red-handed made her panic like a deer in headlights. She lunged forward to snatch the phone, only to get swiftly kicked right back down to the floor by yours truly. With her hair looking like a messy bird's nest, she kneeled on the ground and begged, "Thorne, I'm begging you, please don't do this. Can't we just live a good life together? Live a good life together?" I think that's the most pathetic, laughable joke I've heard in my entire existence. "Oh, don't worry," I sneered. "Daddy is definitely going to live a good life. But before that, I'm going to emotionally and financially ruin you two dumpster fire lovebirds." Right in front of Seraphina's terrified face, I shot a text back to the guy. "I missed you so much last night. I missed you so much, I barely slept a wink." The man on the other end replied with the speed of a desperate teenager. "Baby, how about I drive over and pick you up? You can catch up on your sleep, nice and cozy in my car." Seeing the absolute garbage he just sent, I felt a volcanic rage erupt from the soles of my feet straight to the top of my head. I grabbed Seraphina by the wrist, violently forcing her to stare at the chat history. She struggled, pleading bitterly, "Please, I beg you, don't do this." Deep down in her bones, she had always played the role of a conservative, proper wife. Watching me flirt with her secret lover right in front of her face was a reality she absolutely couldn't stomach. She was teetering right on the edge of a total mental breakdown. "Do you see this?" I hissed. "This is your precious darling. You told him you didn't sleep all night, and he doesn't give a single flying thought about whether your body can handle it or not. His brain is completely filled with dirty, filthy little thoughts. In his eyes, what's the difference between you and an escort at some shady club?" At that moment, tears actually spilled from the corners of my eyes. I wasn't crying over Seraphina's betrayal. I was simply crying for myself, feeling utterly worthless. To think that the woman I treated like an absolute treasure was out here degrading herself so cheaply. I wrapped both my hands around Seraphina's throat, watching her gasp and flail around like a desperately beached flounder. My gaze was ice cold, completely stripped of even a single drop of emotion. I always thought I could handle a situation like this rationally, just like those self-help books say. Even if the love is gone, you shouldn't leave with resentment. But nope, turns out I'm just a guy who can't do that. Right then, a notification chime rang out. If it weren't for that perfectly timed text message, I don't know if I would have actually squeezed the life out of Seraphina. I let go. Seraphina instantly collapsed onto the floor, coughing violently. The look she gave me was filled with endless, bottomless terror. For a split second just then, she genuinely thought she was going to log out of the server of life. I opened her phone. Probably because she hadn't replied for a minute. Caldwell had fired off another text. "Why aren't you replying, baby? If you think sleeping in the car is uncomfortable, we can just go to a hotel." After reading that, I shot Seraphina an ice-cold glare. This woman was as impenetrable as a brick wall and had a mouth harder than week-old stale bread. Trying to pry any useful information out of her trap was going to be impossible. Since that was the case, I decided to bait the truth out of Caldwell's big mouth instead. I started laying out linguistic traps, intentionally guiding Caldwell into self-destructing so I could harvest more evidence. Mimicking Seraphina's tone, I texted back, "Time really flies, doesn't it? Do you even remember when we first started doing this?" Caldwell read it and immediately replied, "Of course I remember. We met the winter before last, at the department headquarters. I still remember the way you played hard to get." Honestly, I overestimated Caldwell. I didn't even need to bait this scumbag. He practically gift-wrapped all the useful information and handed it to me. Caldwell was Seraphina's boss. They had been sneaking around for over a year. Back then, Caldwell was a freshly married man, and Seraphina had even attended his freaking wedding. From the grassroots production line all the way up to the administrative office, you could say these two heavily supported each other along the way. You get a promotion, I get a promotion. Now, The guy was a director, and she was a mid-level logistics manager. After tumbling through the corporate mud in a massive Tier 1 city, Seraphina had returned to Ashwood City. With her experience, bringing her skills to this Tier 3 small town was basically playing the game on easy mode. Her advantage was blindingly obvious. Whether it was her working ability or her interpersonal skills, she handled everything with slick perfection. Back when she was working at the grassroots level, she managed to organize tedious paperwork and data that very few people could ever figure out, keeping it perfectly neat and tidy. She won the approval of the leadership time and time again. Once, the higher-up executive department wanted to host a massive speech competition. Everyone in the unit dodged it like the plague. Nobody wanted to take on this thankless, exhausting task. Eventually, this hot potato landed right in Seraphina's lap. Coincidentally, my old man used to be in charge of propaganda for a certain agency before he retired. Writing speeches of this caliber was basically a walk in the park for the old guy. He spent over 2 hours crafting a deeply moving, emotionally resonant speech. The entire text was tightly focused on the core theme. The speech itself was top-tier quality and inherently brilliant. Combine that with Seraphina's elegant and poised aesthetic, and she ended up bringing the house down at the competition. The congratulatory messages from sister agencies made her boss look incredibly good, and just like that, the golden gates to her political career swung wide open. But what I could never wrap my head around was this. Her path to promotion was already beautifully paved. As long as she stuck to the script, she could have skyrocketed to the top. So why did she have to take such a colossal risk to cheat on her marriage? Was it really just physiological needs? I seriously doubted it, because Seraphina had never been a woman with strong, burning desires. Was it an inner emptiness born from a barren spiritual world? I figured there was a slight possibility of that. I was busy working during the day, came home to take care of the kid at night, and after the kids slept, I still had to hustle a side gig just to bring in some extra cash for the family. Ever since our child was born, my emotional pampering of Seraphina had actually increased compared to the past. But judging from their chat history, this treacherous twosome had more of a business partnership vibe going on. The woman handled the actual work. The man pulled the strings and managed connections. Whoever got promoted first would drag the other one up the ladder. As for the dirty deeds under the sheets, that was just two adults trading favors and taking what they needed. While I was lost in thought, Caldwell fired off another message. "Baby, is it convenient to video call?" I glanced at Seraphina and typed back a single word. "Yes." I switched on the screen recording feature on the phone and pointed the camera directly at Seraphina. Caldwell's face popped up looking happier than a pig in mud. This was the first time Seraphina had ever taken his video call at home. In his greasy little mind, there was only one explanation for this. Seraphina was home alone. Did her husband and mother-in-law take the kid back to their hometown? Thinking about this, Caldwell got pumped with adrenaline, itching with anticipation. Caldwell initiated the video call, but when he saw Seraphina looking like a ragged ghost slumped on the floor with a totally deadpan face, he instantly realized something had gone horribly wrong. The person sweet-talking him just now definitely wasn't Seraphina. Realizing this, his expression froze harder than Windows 95. The Caldwell on the screen looked like a short, pudgy, middle-aged potato. If a 10 was a perfect score, this guy's face was scraping the barrel at a solid 5. I genuinely didn't expect him to look like this. I had assumed the guy was some kind of absolute stud, but the uglier he was, the more tragic I felt about myself. Seraphina would rather cheat with a guy who looked like a melted candle than live a good life with me. I exploded with anger and cursed at her. "Aren't you nauseated by this absolute goblin of a man? If you had found some young, handsome guy, I might have just taken the L, but you actually went out of your way to hook up with a literal pig." Seraphina's aesthetic tastes were absolutely top tier. That was an undeniable fact. Everyone who knew her praised her high standards and great taste, which meant her cheating with Caldwell had absolutely nothing to do with his face. After chewing on it, I realized there was only one logical explanation. Caldwell's family background must be incredibly powerful. Powerful enough to provide a massive booster rocket for Seraphina's career. Thinking about this, my chaotic thoughts slowly crystallized. I spoke up. "Caldwell, right? I don't need to introduce myself, do I? First of all, congratulations on your upcoming promotion to Deputy Section Chief. Though, I guess that promotion might be a little up in the air right now." On the video screen, two men who should have never crossed paths were now facing off in the most bizarre Mexican standoff ever. Seeing me, Caldwell clearly panicked. He quickly tilted his camera so only his shoulder and half of his greasy face were visible. "Brother, let's talk this out slowly. We're all adults here. There's really no need for this." In Caldwell's eyes, everything had a price tag attached to it, even someone else's wife. Since I was also a guy working a cushy government job, I naturally understood the subtext of Caldwell's words. Translated into plain English, he was saying, "Name your price, bro. Everything is negotiable." Yep, in the world of the rich and powerful, life is just that, unpretentious and incredibly boring. The person you cherish the most is no different than a shiny object in their eyes. Hearing this, I replied slowly and unhurriedly, "Sure thing. Why don't you tell me how we should resolve this?" I originally wanted to bait some words out of Caldwell, but this scumbag's bureaucratic occupational disease was way too severe. He actually kicked the ball right back into my court. Caldwell steadied his nerves and continued, "How about this, brother? You propose a resolution plan first, and we can negotiate and see if it works." The moment those words left his mouth, and seeing him sitting there looking as stable as Mount Everest, I completely blew my top. "Resolve my ass. Who the hell do you think I am? You want a resolution? Fine. Let your wife sleep with me for 2 years and we'll call it even." At this point, I was so mad my brain was practically short-circuiting. Let's get one thing straight. I am not short on cash or career prospects, but even if I were completely broke, I would never stoop to the psychopathic level of pimping out my own wife for a promotion. "Brother, please calm down. There's really no need to be like this." Caldwell kept doing his bureaucratic tai chi, spouting nothing but useless filler words. "Listen here, Caldwell. You just wait. We are going to play a very slow game. Watch how I completely ruin your life." I knew I wasn't going to get anything else out of him, so I just hung up the video call. In that moment, I felt like a colossal failure. Having my foundation dug out by a creature lower than a dog, it was as nauseating as it gets. I slumped powerlessly into my computer chair, shot Seraphina a look, and started cleaning up the massive mess in my house. Point 1. Divorce. You are leaving with absolutely nothing. Take your clothes and shoes and go find your precious darling. Didn't he say he wanted to marry you? Perfect. I am clearing out the space. Let him take over the lease. Point 2. I won't strip you of your visitation rights. No matter what, you are still Pippin's mother. But if your trashy drama affects Pippin's healthy upbringing, you will never see him again for the rest of your life. Point 3. I am going to make sure you two dumpster fire lovebirds lose all of your reputation. I am going to make sure both your families can't even lift their heads in public. I want everyone in your agency to know exactly what kind of good deeds you two have been up to. Don't even dream of taking another step up the career ladder in this lifetime. There are millions of roads in this world, and you chose the one that leads straight off a cliff. Since that's the case, don't blame me for being heartless. I am no saint. I can't repay malice with kindness, so you will receive every single ounce of punishment you deserve. Destroying your lives is exactly the karma you ordered. Seraphina stayed silent. She probably realized there was no putting the toothpaste back in the tube on this one. She knew she was dead wrong. She raised 0 objections to my first and second demands. But the moment I dropped the third condition, Seraphina struggled to stand up and pleaded, "I am begging you, Thorne, please, be the bigger person and let Caldwell go. If you go to the agency and make a scene, his future is totally ruined." Honestly, the events of this single night, although they made me furious, sad, miserable, and completely unable to accept reality, they hadn't truly, utterly defeated me. But this one sentence from Seraphina completely broke my defenses. Even at a time like this, you aren't thinking about your husband or your child. You are thinking about how to save the career of your filthy little lover. In that moment, I completely lost my sanity. I delivered a front kick that sent Seraphina crashing to the floor. Noticing a fruit knife on the bookshelf, without even a second thought, I grabbed the blade and thrust it straight towards Seraphina's throat. A psychotic thought echoed in my brain. "You worthless piece of trash, I am going to end you right here, right now." However, just as a horrific tragedy was about to occur, a loud wailing cry suddenly echoed out. "Wah, Mommy, Daddy." That single cry was like a bucket of ice water to the face, yanking me back from the absolute brink of destructive madness. I froze my forward stabbing motion. At that exact moment, the fruit knife was only a few centimeters away from Seraphina's throat. If it hadn't been for Pippin's cry, I really would have stabbed Seraphina to death. Seraphina was scared entirely out of her wits. She realized I had genuinely gone for the kill. I snapped back to reality, overwhelmed by a wave of terrifying hindsight. Cold sweat poured down my back. I had almost made an irreversible, catastrophic mistake. If I killed Seraphina, I would pay with my life. When that happened, how are my nearly 70-year-old parents supposed to survive while raising a toddler not even 3 years old? Seraphina dies, I die. That basically meant I would be solving a massive problem for Caldwell. Wouldn't that just sadden those who love me and thrill my enemies? The person who truly deserved to meet the Reaper was Caldwell. I tucked the phone away and walked briskly into the bedroom. The little guy had woken up, and not seeing any adults around, he was already getting anxious. He was leaning over the crib railing, looking around nervously, his eyes brimming with tears. "Pippin, you're awake." I hurriedly scooped the little guy up and softly comforted him. "Don't cry, Pippin. Daddy is right here." "Mommy?" The little guy craned his neck, starting his search for Mommy. My heart stung. "Starting today, kiddo. You don't have a mommy anymore. Is Pippin hungry? Do you want to drink some milk?" I was worried the little guy would keep crying and looking for his mom, so I used food to hijack his attention. Hearing about food, the little guy indeed stopped looking for his mom. In his milky toddler voice, he demanded, "Daddy, Pippin wants the powder. Starting today, this family ceases to exist. My child is my absolute everything." I took a few deep breaths, trying hard to smooth out my violently fluctuating emotions. I absolutely had to get my revenge, but revenge requires strategy and method. You can't just unga-bunga your way through it. After all, I have elderly parents above me and a toddler below me. Breaking the law was something I shouldn't just avoid doing. I shouldn't even touch it with a 10-foot pole. I can't dig a grave for the next generation. First, I took the little guy to the bathroom, then wiped him down with a face towel, and finally mixed up his formula. I turned on the TV, and the little guy sat obediently on the sofa, chugging his milk while watching cartoons. I found a spare moment to call my mom, asking them to swing by after their medical checkup. I had a colossal mess to clean up at home. I didn't have the energy to watch the kid, so I needed her to come over and help me babysit. Just then, Seraphina walked out with a swollen face. She didn't dare look at me. She kept her head down, walked over to Pippin, hugged him, and started crying softly. "I'm sorry. Mommy was really wrong. I knew she was saying this for my benefit, but I didn't have a shred of forgiveness in me. My hatred for her only multiplied." "Oh, you're wrong now? Where was this energy before?" Pippin chewed on his pacifier, looking at the weeping Seraphina with utter confusion. The little guy, completely clueless to the absolute soap opera unfolding, raised his hand to wipe her tears. "Mommy, don't cry. Pippin is being a good boy." He actually thought his crying from earlier was what made his mom upset. My parents were getting their checkup at a community clinic not far from our apartment complex. They rushed over in about half an hour. The second my mom walked through the door, she sensed the vibe was practically radioactive. My eyes were bloodshot. The corners of my mouth twitched twice. But I ultimately didn't know how to start. This kind of humiliating scandal was genuinely hard to spit out. Seraphina was sitting on the sofa, holding Pippin in her arms, her head lowered, looking bleak and miserable. "What happened?" My mom gasped, jumping in shock when she saw the glaring, red handprint on Seraphina's cheek. She knew exactly how much I spoiled her precious daughter-in-law. Honestly, I used to worship the ground she walked on like she was some kind of goddess. Yet today, I actually laid a hand on her. The room was dead silent. Neither of us had the guts to say a damn word. My mom immediately started chewing me out, frantically searching for some ointment to put on Seraphina's face. My dad just shot me a vicious, terrifying glare. He had drilled it into my head since I was a little kid that a guy who hits a woman is the most pathetic, useless trash alive. Seraphina cheated on me with a married guy from her office. I dropped the bomb with ice-cold calmness. You can't hide from the truth. You definitely can't dodge it forever. Eventually, you just have to face the music. Hearing those words, my mom completely froze like a deer in headlights. My dad had the exact same reaction, his face painted with absolute, jaw-dropping disbelief. "Don't worry about this mess. Just take good care of Pippin. I will handle the rest." After giving my parents their instructions, I locked myself in the study and started plotting the next brutal steps of my revenge manifesto. Here is the screwed-up part. Cheating is strictly a moral issue. It doesn't break any laws, and it sure isn't a crime, so calling the cops would be utterly useless. I also couldn't just grab a kitchen knife and slice Seraphina and Caldwell to ribbons. This isn't some edgy manhwa, after all. The harsh, bitter reality is that I have 70-year-old parents to support until their dying breath, and a 3-year-old toddler to raise until he is all grown up. Even if I threw caution to the wind and totally threw my life away, what about my folks and my little boy? If I die or end up in jail, what the hell are they supposed to do? Thinking about all of this, a massive wave of intense, suffocating irritation crashed over me. I used to hear people joke that a middle-aged guy has it worse than a stray dog, and I never actually believed it. Well, now I finally get to taste the bitter truth of that exact quote. A guy in this brutal phase of life has aging parents above him and helpless kids below him. The crushing weight of 3 whole generations rests heavily on his tired shoulders. He doesn't dare get fired. He doesn't even dare catch a cold. Because the exact second he collapses, it means his entire family goes down straight to hell with him. I shook my head vigorously, forcing my boiling blood to chill out, and desperately thought about how to exact sweet vengeance on that scumbag couple. After tossing around a million ideas, the only truly viable angle was targeting their professional lives. I had to destroy their cushy careers. I wanted to entirely annihilate their reputations and their futures. This was the absolute maximum, devastating damage I could possibly inflict while staying strictly within the boundaries of the law. I gritted my teeth, opened up a Word document, and drafted a sharp, totally destructive whistleblower letter. Attaching damning screenshots of the filthy chat logs between Seraphina and Caldwell, I mass sent the whole explosive package straight into all of Seraphina's company group chats. Then, I immediately powered off my cell phone. Now, I just had to kick back, grab some popcorn, and wait for the absolute circus to begin. At this point, whatever happens, happens. Since you 2 pieces of trash decided to throw away every last ounce of your shame, what the hell do I have to fear? Worst case scenario, we all burn down together in one glorious, chaotic blaze. Even if I have to drag my own good name straight through the mud, there is no way I am letting you 2 ride off into the sunset. When it comes to this ultimate betrayal, there is absolutely zero possibility of compromise. I am going to make absolutely sure you 2 home-wrecking, marriage-betraying scumbags lose your precious reputations and have your entire futures totally nuked from orbit. Time slowly crawled by. I spent the entire damn day basically roasting in an oven of blinding anger and agonizing, heartbreaking pain. I finally managed to endure the silence until the evening rolled around. That was when my ex-monster-in-law and my sister-in-law finally arrived at our place, looking totally road-weary and exhausted. It was only then that I found out the exact second my whistleblower letter went live. Seraphina's entire agency had completely exploded into absolute chaos. The company bosses couldn't reach her, and my phone was obviously dead to the world. Eventually, digging through her emergency contacts, they managed to get a hold of my ex-monster-in-law. Knowing her family was rushing over from a whole different state, the agency actually sent corporate goons to pick them up at the station, briefed them on my epic mass emailing stunt, and personally chauffeured them straight to my apartment complex. Those corporate suits even specifically instructed the ex-monster-in-law to prioritize peace and harmony at all costs, practically begging us not to blow this scandal out of proportion and cause a massive PR nightmare. But honestly, looking at her tonight, the ex-monster-in-law felt like a total, hostile stranger to me. She acted like a hands-on-her-hips, totally logic-defying, street-brawling banshee who only cared about defending her precious bloodline, completely ignoring who was actually in the right. The absolute very first thing she did the second she walked through my front door was unleash a torrential, deafening downpour of scolding right in my face. Can you believe she actually blamed me for caring too little about Seraphina on a daily basis? She had the nerve to blame me for lacking ambition at work, claiming it made me totally unable to provide enough networking leverage for Seraphina's thriving career. Basically, she hit me with a loud, obnoxious highlight reel of absolutely everything wrong with me as a husband. Seriously, even if her precious daughter had decided to use our kitchen cooking pot as a toilet, this crazy old bat would argue that I simply placed the pot in the wrong damn location. In her delusional eyes, her daughter was flawlessly, purely innocent. But before I even had a single chance to clap back, my own mom fired the first defensive shot. 2 little old ladies who were usually so pleasant and polite suddenly morphed into fierce, savage defenders of their own offspring. They went back and forth, screaming and arguing so unbelievably loud, I thought the roof was actually going to cave in on us. I took a deep, grounding breath, stepped right in front of my mom to act as a human shield, and locked eyes with the ex-monster-in-law. With a heavy, exhausted voice, I stared her down and said, "Look, strictly for the sake of you being Pippin's grandmother, I will call you Mom exactly one last time. But I just have 2 simple questions for you. Number 1, Your daughter sleeping around and cheating on me. Was she right, or was she wrong to do that? Of course, the evasive ex-monster-in-law stubbornly refused to answer the question directly. With her neck turning beet red, she argued back, spitting out the exact same tired, garbage rhetoric just to shift the blame. Well, that is still your fault for not caring enough about her feelings and for having zero ambition at your job. I let out a sharp, incredibly cold, sarcastic laugh. Are you kidding me? I do 100% of the household chores. I am the one who has always done the laundry. I cook literally whatever your precious, spoiled daughter feels like eating on any given day. When she comes home totally exhausted from work, I am the one rubbing her feet and giving her massages. And you seriously call this not caring enough? Your daughter's entire combined salary is barely over $6,000 a month. My agency pays me around that exact same level. But the amount of hard cash I hand over to her every single month has never, ever been less than 5 digits. And you have the absolute gall to call this having no ambition? The ex-monster-in-law knew perfectly well how much I worshipped and pampered Seraphina, but she still stubbornly refused to bow her head or admit defeat. Whatever. You clearly just didn't do a good enough job as a man. If you did absolutely everything perfectly, why in the world would my Jinjin ever feel the need to cheat? It was a display of flawless, Olympic-level mental gymnastics from the crazy old lady. I didn't want to waste another second arguing with her incredibly twisted logic, so I just pushed forward. Question number 2. The guy your beloved daughter cheated with is her own coworker. She knew perfectly well that the man was happily married. Hell, she even went to his freaking wedding. Both of them knew exactly that the other person had a spouse and a family waiting at home. Yet they still decided to hook up in secret. Do you honestly still think your daughter has any sort of moral high ground left to stand on here? Even if you somehow think you are right, and even if I stood here and admitted to 100 separate mistakes, that guy's poor wife doesn't even know your daughter. They have absolutely zero bad blood between them. Your daughter completely went out of her way to ruthlessly destroy another innocent woman's marriage and family. Can you seriously stand there with a straight spine and try to tell me it is the other woman's fault for not keeping her own husband on a tighter leash? Newsflash. Cheating is never some glorious badge of honor, but the ex-monster-in-law was just completely, hopelessly delusional. Spoiling a child rotten is one thing, but this was absolute, next-level brain rot. Thankfully, my sister-in-law at least possessed a somewhat functioning moral compass. Seeing her crazy mother gearing up to argue even further, she quickly grabbed the old lady's arm and hissed, "Mom, seriously, stop talking. Let's just go check on my sister first, okay?" Saying that, she shot me an incredibly pained, highly apologetic look. Elaine had always been secretly jealous of Seraphina, constantly saying I was the ultimate gold standard model husband and that her sister was the luckiest damn woman on the entire planet. Now that a massive, life-ruining catastrophe like this had officially occurred, she honestly had no clue what to say to me. Inside the room, Seraphina lay sideways on our bed with her back facing the door, looking completely, creepily motionless. No matter how insane and deafening the screaming match got out in the living room, she remained totally, eerily apathetic to all of it. It was honestly as if the sky crashing down around us had absolutely nothing to do with her anymore. The ex-monster-in-law and my sister-in-law both got a massive, heart-stopping jump scare, genuinely thinking I had literally strangled the cheating woman to death. "Sis, oh my God, are you okay?" Elaine finally gathered up her courage, walked over to the bed, and gently propped her up. Seraphina's eyes were totally dull and horrifyingly lifeless. The vicious, red slap mark I left on her face was crystal clear under the bedroom lights. Seeing her precious daughter actually physically struck, the ex-monster-in-law instantly started throwing a wild, unrelenting tantrum all over again. Elaine suddenly whipped around, grabbed my arm, and angrily interrogated me. "Brother-in-law, back when my sister first married you, what exactly did you promise me? You swore you would cherish and love her for a whole lifetime, and now you are sitting here domestically abusing her. What the hell do you have to say for yourself?" I violently shook off her hand, and with insanely bloodshot eyes, I roared from the bottom of my lungs. If murder wasn't a felony, I would have shoved a freaking knife straight through her already. My raw, agonizing voice boomed so incredibly loud that it instantly crushed the ex-monster-in-law's pathetic banshee wailing. I hadn't slept a wink in a full day and a night. Both my shattered mind and my battered body were totally running on absolute fumes. Right then and there, with my blazing red eyes and my thoroughly ferocious expression, forget about my sister-in-law and the ex-monster-in-law, even my own sweet mother was absolutely terrified of the monster I had become. She was genuinely, deeply worried that my broken brain would finally snap and I really would grab a knife and stab Seraphina to death. Because if I actually did that, this entire family would truly, permanently be over. I honestly don't know how the hell I managed to survive that suffocating night until dawn finally broke. Hearing faint rustling noises out in the hall, I knew the elderly folks had already woken up. Seraphina was still just lying in that bed, looking half dead, not saying a single word, not eating a bite, not drinking a drop. Honestly, I didn't have much of an appetite myself. I simply couldn't force myself to swallow anything. With an absolute, toxic war zone of a house to manage, I figured there was absolutely no way I was going to make it into work. I desperately needed to request a leave of absence from my boss. But the exact second I turned on my powered-down phone, beep beep beep, unread messages, 99 plus. I stared at the screen, totally bewildered. What on earth was happening out there? Every single relative and friend was blowing up my phone. I had a creeping suspicion that something was seriously wrong. I never expected my little domestic drama to end up trending locally on the internet. But right then, my brain was completely consumed with getting revenge on Seraphina and Caldwell, so I didn't think too much of it. It was only much later that I realized I'd been played by people with hidden agendas. I had literally become a loaded gun in someone else's hands. At 12 p.m., maybe because of the mounting public pressure or some other reason, Seraphina's agency director, Aldous, actually invited me to his house for a chat. Once I got there, we went through the usual robotic pleasantries. Neither of us was in a good mood, so we cut straight to the chase. Aldous poured some tea and said, "Little Fang, you're a guy who's seen how the real world works in the big city. Logically speaking, you should be able to keep your cool. But forgive your uncle for saying this. You handled this whole thing way too recklessly. Things can always be negotiated, right? Why did you have to make such a colossal mess? To be completely honest, I didn't do this out of some sudden impulse. I did it after deep, calculated consideration. My ultimate goal was to burn all my bridges and leave myself zero escape routes, rejecting any possibility of compromise or reconciliation. I just wanted justice. Aldous's hand, still pouring the tea, froze for a split second. Then, a bitter smile spread across his face. "Little Fang, if you have grievances, you can always report them to the organization. There's really no need to use such extreme, radical methods. My demands are incredibly simple." I fired back. "No compromises. No swallowing my pride for the greater good. Everything goes strictly by the book. Both Seraphina and Caldwell are party officials. According to the regulations, handle them exactly how they're supposed to be handled. You." Sigh. Aldous probably didn't expect my stance to be forged out of pure titanium. He pointed a finger upward. "This mess you've made. You have absolutely no idea. The higher-ups are completely blowing up over this. Don't try to scare me. It couldn't be that serious. I'm just a nobody. Who's really gonna care about my little domestic soap opera, other than giving the internet trolls a quick laugh and some juicy gossip over their evening tea?" Looking back, my perspective was way too narrow. I completely failed to grasp the sheer gravity of the situation. I was purely looking at this from the viewpoint of a victim trying to defend his rights. But this entire incident had already been hijacked by people with hidden agendas. I became the literal murder weapon in their hands. I was fighting for my rights. They were fighting for absolute power. As the situation escalated, the true mastermind behind the curtain was eventually dragged out into the light. But, of course, that's a story for later. How about this? Whatever demands you have, just name them. The agency will step forward and make sure Caldwell provides you with substantial financial compensation. What do you say? Ah, yes. The classic "let me throw money at the peasant" maneuver. I wasn't having a single second of it. "Uncle, what kind of talk is that? My family has basically been nuked from orbit. My kid doesn't even have a mother anymore. Is this something money can just magically fix? What kind of person do you take me for?" Seeing me getting so riled up, Aldous hurriedly tried to soothe me. "Little Fang, don't get agitated. Since you really don't want to settle privately, then we'll just have to do things strictly by the book." "How exactly will you do it by the book?" "Tomorrow, bring your evidence to the agency, draft a formal whistleblower report, and submit it in person." After locking down an approximate time to visit their agency tomorrow with Aldous, and confirming the specific evidence materials they required, we exchanged some random, awkward small talk, and I finally got up to leave. As soon as I got home, my sister-in-law asked, "Brother-in-law, are you going to divorce my sister?" I knew she was just playing scout for her mother's side, trying to test my boundaries. I didn't even bother hiding anything. I don't want a divorce. I want to stab her to death. Is that allowed? Elowen stared at me, the corners of her mouth twitching nervously a few times. Ultimately, she had absolutely zero idea what to even say. She originally came here to play the noble peacemaker, but that single sentence of mine completely vaporized any chance of that happening. She knew this situation was way past the point of no return. From here on out, it was going to be an all-out, no-holds-barred war where everyone finally showed their true colors. And finally, we break free from the time loop. The story officially continues. The very next morning, I grabbed the prepared whistleblower materials and headed straight to Seraphina's agency. Because I was seriously worried something shady might happen in the middle of it all. I dragged my good buddy Vance along for backup. Vance had barely parked his BMW by the curb at the agency's entrance before I spotted Aldous waiting outside. I had originally planned to give Aldous a call to let him know I was arriving. We only set a rough time yesterday, and I hadn't updated him at all before coming over today. So, how did he magically know I was showing up at this exact, precise moment? There was absolutely no way this was just a coincidence. "Morning, little Fang." Aldous greeted me with incredibly suspicious enthusiasm. "Uncle Aldous, sorry to keep you waiting." "Oh, no, I just finished arranging some work and came out for a quick breather. I didn't expect to bump right into you. Is there really such a perfect coincidence under the sun? I believe you about as much as I believe in ghosts. So, the infiltration has already reached into my own home. Huh. You didn't even need brain cells to figure this one out. It was definitely the ex-monster-in-law or Elowen acting as a snitch. Their family had clearly formed a united front with Seraphina's agency, joining forces to deal with me, the ultimate outsider. Without batting an eye, I smoothly asked, "Uncle Aldous, is the big boss in right now?" "He is. He just finished up some work, so he should have some free time now." "Come on, I'll take you over." Aldous led the way. I intentionally fell a half step behind, making small talk while casually scoping the place out. Even though I knew asking was probably completely pointless, I still couldn't resist opening my mouth. "Uncle Aldous, did Caldwell come in today?" Aldous shook his head. "He took a leave of absence. I heard his heart was acting up, so he went to the hospital for a quick checkup." "That makes sense. Even if Caldwell was in the office, he wouldn't dare tell me. The absolute hatred of having your wife stolen is utterly irreconcilable. If the two of us threw hands right in the middle of the agency, wouldn't that just make their PR nightmare even worse?" The big boss of their agency was a young official in his early 40s, riding the high winds of success with a very bright future ahead of him. "Little Fang, this incident has had an incredibly toxic impact, bringing massive negative press to the agency. But rest assured, the agency will definitely handle this with strict, absolute impartiality. But before that, could I take a look at the evidence first?" I handed him my phone. The chat logs inside were securely backed up and specifically curated, meaning I deleted the less relevant fluff. It wouldn't affect the final verdict. He looked at the screen for a moment, frowned heavily, and said, "These two definitely have a serious issue. If verified, how should we handle it?" "If verified, they should be stripped of all ranks and dropped to the absolute bottom," I replied. Both Seraphina and Caldwell would hit rock bottom. After all, their situation wasn't just a simple lifestyle issue. It highly likely involved other shady, transactional favors. Hearing my own words, I let out a quiet sigh of relief. This was the absolute limit of what I could achieve within the strict confines of the law. Things were progressing smoothly, actually. It was somewhat exceeding my expectations, but I barely had time to finish that thought before the big boss suddenly changed the subject. "Little Fang, I heard from the employees' family members that you have a history of domestic violence. Seraphina is an employee of our agency. The agency has a moral responsibility to protect the personal safety of our staff. We need to report this incident to the Public Security Bureau. Since you're already here, why don't you stick around and give a statement later?" Hearing this, my eyes instantly narrowed into absolute slits. "Is your agency really preparing to cover for that trashy duo? You know perfectly well that with my status as a public servant, it's completely unthinkable for me to risk getting a criminal record at the police station. So, you want to use this to blackmail and control me. But they severely underestimated me. The second I hit send on that whistleblower letter, I was already prepared to go out in a blaze of glory rather than surrender in one piece. Regarding this matter, there is zero room for compromise. Trying to threaten me with my job? Sorry, but you picked the exact wrong target. Right in front of both the big boss and Aldous, I directly dialed the police station and slapped my phone on speaker. "Hello, officer. I'd like to report an incident. It's like this. I found out my wife was cheating on me. In a fit of overwhelming rage, I couldn't hold back, and I slapped her." The big boss was completely dumbfounded. Even Aldous, who had seen it all working in PR his entire life, was staring at me with his jaw practically unhinged. What kind of massive reverse Uno card was this? Turning himself in? They never actually intended to call the cops. The agency couldn't afford that kind of explosive public humiliation. They just wanted to use the threat to press down on me, force me to yield, and then quietly sweep the whole thing under the rug. They never expected me to be this incredibly hardcore, turning myself in right there on the spot. It completely blew their premeditated script into absolute smithereens. The 911 dispatcher patiently tried to play peacemaker before finally giving me a stern warning. "Look, if you two really can't stand living together anymore, take it to court and file for divorce. But no matter what's going down, you absolutely cannot put your hands on someone. Do you understand me? I have officially logged your report. We will be doing a follow-up visit at your residence later." Hanging up the phone, the big boss and Aldous just stared at me, then exchanged a bewildered look. My kamikaze tactic had completely broken their minds. The move I just pulled was genuinely unhinged, completely throwing the standard playbook right out the window. Put it this way, any public servant with even an ounce of political survival instincts would never pull a stunt like this. But I did it anyway. Cough. Cough. Well, Little Fang, your report has been officially accepted by our agency. But, as you know, these things have to go through a proper process. Rest assured, we will issue a resolution as quickly as possible. And just like that, the big boss slammed the gavel down to end the conversation. Since the dice were already rolled, all I could do now was wait. This scandal was already stirring up a massive hurricane, with wild rumors flying all over the internet. There was no way in hell their agency would dare to drag this out forever. Walking out of the big boss's office, I spotted my buddy Vance enthusiastically shooting the breeze, with 2 on-duty security guards. Aldous's face instantly darkened. "Hey! During working hours instead of actually patrolling, what kind of nonsense are you guys gossiping about?" The 2 guards practically scrambled over each other, pretending to get back to their rounds. "Little Fang, don't blame your Uncle Aldous for being a nag. Since a mess like this happened both personally and professionally, I have to visit your home to ensure the personal safety of our agency's employee." I just nodded, showing I got the memo. I rode shotgun in Vance's BMW, while Aldous trailed right behind us in his Audi. "Bro, do you have any idea what kind of juicy intel your boy just fished out?" Vance rolled down the window, spat out a loogie, and kept talking. "That scumbag Caldwell. Yeah, this isn't his first rodeo. The dude is a literal serial offender. I knew good old Vance could make friends with a brick wall. The guy had thick skin and a razor-sharp mind. He definitely squeezed a ton of useful dirt out of those 2 guards. So, I quietly waited for the punchline. But the explosive bombshell he dropped next made me feel like I had just eaten absolute garbage. It only poured gasoline on my absolute resolve for revenge. I vaguely remembered the incident Vance was bringing up. Just a few months ago, there was an event here that caused a massive, chaotic uproar in the agency. A girl's parents actually brought her to the office, causing a huge scene and threatening to jump off the building to commit suicide. The girl was only 23 years old, a fresh university grad with a teaching degree. She had literally just graduated this year and hadn't locked down a job yet. Rumor had it she was completely played by Caldwell's sweet-talking and grand promises, only to be tossed aside like trash. The poor girl couldn't handle the trauma and tried to end her own life. Thank God, her family found her in time. After figuring out what that monster did, they marched straight from Caldwell's house directly to his agency. That absolute bastard had bragged to the girl about how incredibly powerful his family's background was, promising to hand her a cushy job on a silver platter. Using cheap coercion and bait, he actually took the girl's virginity, and in the end, not only did he pull up his pants and refuse to. I still remember when she casually mentioned a quote-unquote colleague who got blackout drunk and stumbled into a hotel room with some woman. The next morning, this girl points to the blood on the sheets, sobbing that it was her first time, and demands he take responsibility. But of course, this guy was already married. He swore up and down it was just a dirty trap designed to extort and blackmail him. Seraphina actually looked me in the eye and asked what he should do. I didn't give her any strategic advice back then. I just laid it out straight. Being drunk is a garbage excuse. They are grown adults. You make a mess, you take responsibility for it. I even warned my sweet wife to stay the hell away from that colleague. Any trash bag who zips up his pants and plays the victim is pure poison. Looking back on it now, it makes my blood boil. Seraphina was literally doing crisis management for her own lover. Oh, Seraphina, you truly are a piece of work. Thank God I didn't actually feed her any real strategies back then. My fist shook as everything clicked. Just you wait. Even if I have to burn this whole city to the ground, I am going to make you two scumbags pay in blood. But the deeper I dug, the more insane this whole thing got. Her agency's reaction was totally twisted. Caldwell was out there using the company name to prey on women. Victims were literally protesting right at their front doors. And what did management do? They played deaf and blind. Not a single disciplinary action, not even a fake slap on the wrist for the cameras. And then there is my brilliant wife. Caldwell is married, yet he is out here sleeping with half the city. God only knows how many side pieces he has stashed away. Seraphina, you aren't even his main mistress. Don't you feel absolutely filthy? What did you honestly think you were getting out of this? Oh, and let us not forget Caldwell's wife. The girl he scammed actually showed up at his front porch. When knocking on his door did nothing, the victim marched straight to the agency. Through all that public humiliation, his wife did not say a single peep. She didn't file for divorce, either. Word on the street is they still parade around town like the perfect, loving couple, acting like his cheating never happened. Honestly, this whole society makes me sick to my stomach. When we finally got home, Vance didn't even bother coming upstairs. He just hit the gas and drove off. I led Aldous into the apartment. He walked in, took one glance at Seraphina, and noticed she was facing the wall. I had no idea if she was faking sleep or just too humiliated to look her old boss in the eye. She just lay there on the bed, frozen like a corpse. My dad brewed a pot of tea and offered Aldous a seat, keeping up the polite small talk for a bit. But eventually, the elephant in the room had to be addressed. The kid isn't even 3 years old yet. It is just so heartbreaking, Aldous muttered. He glanced over at little Pippin, who was glued to the television on the couch, and let out this long, dramatic sigh. I saw right through it. Aldous was here playing the mediator to protect their precious agency. Even though his little guilt trip went totally against my plans, I could not really hate the guy. He was just reciting standard human empathy. When adults tear a marriage apart, the kid takes the hardest hit. He kept going, saying, Seraphina is incredibly capable, and she works so hard. Clawing her way up wasn't easy. If she secures this promotion, it would be a massive financial leap for your whole family. Think of your child's future. I slammed the brakes on that speech. Uncle Aldous, do you have any idea who wrote the presentation that actually launched Seraphina's entire career? I pointed straight at my father. My dad wrote every single word. Before he retired, he did this for a living. If his old department hadn't begged him to stay, he would have been a top-tier propaganda director years ago. And what about her recent wins? That massive logistics data report she submitted? I burned the midnight oil for 2 whole nights, hunting down resources and writing the entire thing for her. All she did was spell check and tweak a couple of words. I am literally a clueless amateur when it comes to logistics. Yet, the Frankenstein report I stitched together from late-night internet searches was hailed as highly professional by her so-called peers. It even got a standing ovation from your managing director. The guy literally said all future reports should use it as the gold standard template. So tell me, Uncle Aldous, is your agency hiring? Because at this rate, maybe you should just give me her job. Hearing that, Aldous looked like he wanted the floor to swallow him whole. The truth stung. I, an absolute outsider who had never clocked a single day at their company, cranked out a report that their top boss worshipped as a masterpiece. Didn't that basically prove their entire agency required zero actual talent? We made small talk for a few more minutes. But seeing that my resolve was made of iron and I wasn't backing down a single inch, Aldous finally realized his emotional manipulation was completely useless. He awkwardly got up to leave. Uncle Aldous, the agency isn't planning to just sweep this under the rug and stall forever, are they? I dropped the question casually while walking him downstairs. It was a crystal clear warning. Their delay tactics were not going to work on me. If that agency dares to protect this garbage and do nothing, they had better not cry when I tear their entire world apart. Aldous was a cunning old fox, and he instantly caught the hidden threat in my words. He just shook his head and let out a dry laugh. You little brat, he chuckled, trying to tap dance on my last nerve now. Huh? I simply opened the car door for him, and as he slid into the seat, he smirked. Don't worry, kid. Our agency is famous for getting things done fast. My mouth gave a slight twitch. Yeah, right. The poor girl that Caldwell ruined allegedly protested for over 2 whole months, and his so-called fast agency didn't lift a single finger to help her. But if they dared to drag their feet on my revenge? Sorry, but we would be seeing each other at the higher-up departments. Just as I watched Aldous drive off and turned to head back upstairs, an ambulance came screeching into the apartment complex, slamming its brakes right in front of my building. I remember thinking, wow, someone must be knocking on death's door. But then, a bunch of medics hopped out with a stretcher and sprinted straight up to my floor. Next thing I know, they were carrying Seraphina out. Honestly, I wasn't even shocked. Just this morning, my screeching ex-monster-in-law was already hollering her lungs out about Seraphina being violently ill and desperately needing a hospital. 3 whole days without a single drop of water or a crumb of food. Even a body made of solid iron couldn't handle that kind of punishment. I didn't say a single word to her. I just stood there, arms crossed, my eyes ice cold as I watched them scramble around in a panic. My daughter stood quietly by the doorway, looking totally helpless as she watched her mother get hauled away on that stretcher. The ex-monster-in-law scurried frantically down the stairs right behind them. My sister-in-law reached the door, then suddenly spun around. Tears streamed down her face as she pulled Pippin into a tight hug. "Baby, be good," she choked out. "You have to listen to Daddy, okay?" With that, she walked out, never looking back. "Mommy?" The little guy stared up at me, completely bewildered. He was way too young to understand that his world was falling apart. Starting today, my son didn't have a mother anymore. My mom sat on the couch, pulling Pippin close while quietly wiping her own tears. At first, I couldn't figure out why my sister-in-law bothered coming back just to cry over the kid. But then it hit me. She felt guilty. She knew their family's next twisted move was to wage an all-out psychological war against me. And their weapon of choice? My innocent child. Kids naturally love a full, lively house. Having his grandma and aunt over had made him so incredibly happy, especially since his aunt brought him a toy excavator and a shiny new action figure. Even though his grandma wore a dark scowl the whole time she was here, whenever she held him, you could see the love in her eyes. The adults had been locked in a bitter silent treatment, but my little guy was completely oblivious to the toxic tension. 1 second he was laughing with my parents, the next he was playing with his other grandma and aunt. He was having the time of his life. But now, the house had suddenly grown dead, cold, and entirely empty. Pippin just couldn't process the sudden shift. The fallout hit hard. He just kept tugging my shirt, asking, "Daddy, where did Mommy and Auntie go?" By nightfall, things completely spiraled out of control. My boy wandered through every room in the house, desperately searching for his mom. When he couldn't find her, he absolutely lost it. He cried so hard he was gasping for air, trembling and practically bouncing off the walls. Nothing we did could calm him down. Watching her grandson suffer like that, my mom completely broke down. Tears spilling over, she looked at me and pleaded, "Why don't you just call his mom? Ask them to come back." My dad stared at Pippin, who was crying so hard he was about to pass out, and shot me the exact same heartbroken look. I knew the child was entirely innocent in this mess. But backing down? That was a bitter pill I absolutely refused to swallow. Making a mistake is one thing, but knowing you're dead wrong and still diving headfirst into the fire like a suicidal moth? That's terrifying. A fiercely unrepentant woman like Seraphina didn't deserve the title of mother. Instead of swallowing my pride and dragging out this toxic, messy nightmare for the rest of my life, I needed to cut the knot with a razor-sharp blade. Right here, right now. You know what they say, better a sharp, short-term pain than a lifetime of agony. Since we had already crossed the point of no return, my only job was to help my son survive this painful transition as fast as humanly possible. "Mom, you and Dad go get some rest," I said softly. "I'll take Pippin downstairs for a bit of fresh air." He sobbed back. "I don't want fresh air. I want Mommy," he wailed. Okay, I cooed, rubbing his back. "Daddy will take Pippin to find Mommy. All right? But you have to be brave and stop crying. If you keep crying, we can't go find her." My parents knew my decision to divorce was absolutely ironclad, so they didn't push it any further. By 10 o'clock at night, all the other kids in the apartment complex had already gone home to bed. The lights at the playground were completely shut off, leaving the whole area pitch black. I bundled Pippin up tightly in a warm baby blanket so he wouldn't catch a chill, and I just carried him around the complex, walking in endless, exhausting loops. "Daddy, why aren't we there yet?" he whispered. He had finally stopped crying. His big, hopeful eyes were wide open, desperately waiting to see his mom. Over the next 2 hours, he must have asked me that exact same question a million times. I felt like an absolute zombie, aimlessly trudging along those dark pathways, loop after agonizing loop. Finally, the little guy just couldn't fight off the exhaustion anymore and passed out cold in my arms. By that point, my arms and legs had completely lost all feeling. They were entirely numb. Honestly, just like my soul. The very next morning, the nightmare restarted. He woke up violently sobbing for his mom. I tried comforting him for ages, but absolutely nothing worked. Eventually, his grandparents strapped him into his stroller and took him outside just to pretend they were looking for her. Around noon, my mom came back. She looked incredibly nervous and admitted the kid was crying so hard he couldn't breathe, so she had desperately tried calling Seraphina. Turns out, the call wouldn't even go through. My ex-mother-in-law and my sister-in-law's phones were totally unreachable too. I thought that was incredibly sketchy, so I pulled out my own phone and tried. A dead, automated voice told me all their phones were powered off. Then, I called the hospital. The front desk flat out told me Seraphina had never even checked in. That manipulative woman just used their ambulance as a free taxi ride. I glanced down at my son, his little eyes completely swollen from crying, and the sickening truth hit me. Seraphina's family was using Pippin as a literal bargaining chip to force me to surrender. My parents are elderly, and my dad's health is failing. I couldn't just wash my hands of the situation and dump the grueling burden of raising a toddler on them. But on the flip side, I had a job to do. I had to earn money to keep this family afloat. The kid was way too young to be ripped away from his mother. They knew he was my Achilles heel, and they were deliberately squeezing me where it hurt most. I stood there, mentally cursing out 18 generations of Seraphina's ancestors. Look, even though you are dead wrong, trying to secure a little extra cash in the divorce is at least human nature. But using our own flesh and blood as a bargaining chip? Blackmailing me with my son to force my submission? Seraphina, you severely miscalculated who you're messing with. Right at that exact second, my phone buzzed. Seraphina had sent me a massive wall of text. The gist of her ridiculous ultimatum? She would come back to finalize the divorce and take the kid, but only if I publicly restored her reputation and got her job back. She claimed that was the only way she'd have the courage to show her face and continue working. At first, I didn't get it. You've already been fired. Whether you work or not has nothing to do with me. Does she actually think I have some magic power to mind control her boss? But then, the puzzle pieces snapped together. I finally realized the sinister scheme she was brewing. She wasn't officially fired yet. She was only suspended. As long as I dropped the whole issue, she wouldn't have to face any further investigations or nasty disciplinary actions. She could waltz right back into her precious job. And here's the kicker: if she was proven innocent, then her scumbag lover Caldwell would be cleared too. It was a masterful, two birds one stone trick. She wasn't just saving her own skin, she was saving Caldwell's right alongside hers. But pulling a stunt like this meant Seraphina was shoving me directly into a coffin. Think about it, if they were suddenly innocent, wouldn't that make me guilty of filing false reports and maliciously framing them? The second their names were cleared, I'd get slammed with a vicious counter-lawsuit from both of them. Seraphina's demand wasn't just absurd, it was a calculated, lethal strike aimed straight at my heart. She was literally teaming up with her lover to throw her own husband into a prison cell. I honestly couldn't fathom how the woman I loved had mutated into such a cold-blooded monster. Over 10 years of marriage, man, even if your heart was carved out of solid granite, you couldn't be this ruthlessly evil, right? Well, fine. If that's the play she wants to make, it's time for me to go full dark side. Do not blame me for pulling out the dirtiest tricks in the book, and when the dust settles, don't you dare blame me for turning into a wolf. Without missing a beat, I dialed a number, laid out a few very specific instructions, and hung up. Now, it was just a matter of waiting for her spectacularly tragic downfall. The very next morning, my buddy Vance and I marched straight into the police station and officially reported my wife as a runaway. I told them she'd been missing for days, her whereabouts were completely unknown, and we desperately needed police assistance to track her down. The officer at the front desk handed me a stack of paperwork and told me to fill in my ID details. She looked up and asked, "Sir, do you know why your wife might have run away from home?" I looked her dead in the eye and said, "Because she was having an affair." She hooked up with a coworker from her agency, completely abandoned her home, and dumped our child without a second thought. My son isn't even 3 years old yet. He's at home, crying for his mommy every single day, while she vanished into thin air like she evaporated from the face of the earth. I politely asked the officer if they could use her phone's GPS to track her down, just to confirm she was safe. The officer sighed. "That's a bit complicated, sir. We'd have to get special approval from the higher-ups. Unless it's an active criminal investigation, we aren't legally allowed to just ping a location. Honestly, I was just asking to put on a good show. I never had any real hope of using their tech in the first place. Finding her wasn't the actual reason I was filing this report. A few minutes after registering my details, my phone buzzed. It was an official text message confirming that my missing person case had been formally accepted by the Ashwood City Police Department. Gotcha. That right there was the sole purpose of my trip. As we walked out of the precinct, old Vance scratched his head, looking totally, utterly bewildered. "Old Fang, what the hell are you actually trying to pull here?" I really didn't want to drag Vance into the blast radius of this mess, so I just smirked. "You'll see when the time comes." "Oh hey, you're in a ton of those local group chats, right? Later tonight, I need you to forward something for me." The more eyes on it, the better. Vance was in a ridiculous amount of chat groups. Local wet market vendors, neighborhood watch, supermarket deals, bar crowds, you name it, he was in it. Those groups spread juicy gossip faster and way more effectively than the evening news. My next move was simple. Weaponize their gossip to build a massive, unstoppable wave of public momentum. The second I got home, I booted up my laptop, opened a fresh Word document, and began typing up a very special missing person notice. To all kind-hearted citizens, my wife, Seraphina, recently engaged in an inappropriate, illicit affair with her colleague, Caldwell. When confronted, she failed to provide any explanation, sparking a severe family dispute. The very next morning, Seraphina abandoned our home. She has not returned, and her whereabouts remain a total mystery. Mysteriously, the other man in question, Caldwell, took a sudden leave of absence from their agency at the exact same time. He, too, has vanished without a trace, and even his own employer has no idea where he is hiding. As her husband, I am burning with anxiety for her safety and have already filed an official police report to locate her. The police case number is attached below for verification. Furthermore, she left behind our innocent son, who is not even 3 years old yet. Since being away from his mom for so many days, my little boy has developed severe anxiety. He's crying day and night, just begging for her to come back. Our family has decided not to hold Seraphina accountable for the horrible things she's done anymore. A young kid simply cannot go a single day without his mother. We are just begging Seraphina to please come home as soon as humanly possible. Taking 10,000 steps back, even if you completely decide you absolutely must be with Caldwell, please at least send word that you are safe, just to give your family some peace of mind. And hey, please pass a message along to Caldwell too. Tell him his wife and his mother are extremely worried about him. They are praying he can just call home and tell them he is safe. His own mother says if you don't want your wife anymore, you can divorce her, but you absolutely cannot just abandon your family like trash. Your dad was so incredibly angry about all this that he had a massive heart attack and is already hospitalized. If anyone out there knows the whereabouts of these two individuals, please contact this number immediately. Spoiler alert, the phone number I put down was totally made up. Right there on the missing person notice, I wrote down Seraphina and Caldwell's exact ages, heights, phone numbers, and home addresses in exquisite, excruciating detail. Then, I slapped a crystal-clear, front-facing photo of both of them right on the flyer. After finishing up the notice, I went ahead and registered a brand new account on Weibo. I literally named the account the Caldwell Whistleblower Exclusive Channel. I pinned that missing person notice directly at the top of the homepage, spent $1,000 out of pocket to boost its traffic, and then quickly sent the link over to Vance. Old Vance, do me a solid and forward this everywhere you can. The more eyeballs we get on it, the better. This way, if there were any actual leads, people could easily find me through Weibo. With all of that done, all that was left to do was just wait. I seriously refused to believe Seraphina and Caldwell could keep playing the roles of cowardly turtles forever. Not long after the missing person notice actually went live, it didn't smoke out the dumpster fire duo first like I expected. No, it smoked out Aldous instead. The trending hashtags on the major social platforms had just recently been taken down. Old Aldous hadn't even had a spare second to breathe a sigh of relief before I cooked up this entire missing person notice stunt and literally marched straight to the police station to file an official report. I completely reignited the massive heat that had only just cooled down. This move left Aldous feeling incredibly speechless and totally frustrated. Other guys get to retire peacefully and quietly, so why did his retirement feel like he was fighting for his life in a daily war zone? The poor guy was starting to get raging insomnia now, absolutely terrified that one single wrong move meant he wouldn't even get to enjoy his precious golden years. Little Fang, what kind of twisted play are you directing now? Aldous absolutely did not want to call me, but his back was against the wall and he had no choice. If he didn't figure out my true intentions, he wouldn't even be able to stomach his dinner. Uncle Aldous, whatever do you mean? What happened? I played dumb like an absolute pro. Don't you dare sit there and tell me that missing person notice blowing up on the internet wasn't your doing? Uncle Aldous. Oh yeah, I definitely made that. I mean, my wife straight up ran away from home, and right now I don't even know if she's dead or alive out there. It makes total sense logically and emotionally for a worried husband to look for her, right? Besides, our kid is way too young and really can't be without his mom. Aldous was slowly being driven insane by my calculated antics. Look, if you want to look for someone, just look for someone. Why the hell did you have to mention the agency though? Uncle Aldous, Seraphina is a direct employee of your agency. Now that she's suddenly missing and completely off the grid, why isn't your agency worried about her at all? Not to be that guy, but your agency's employee care program seriously needs a major upgrade. Your agency is a crucial clue in this investigation. Of course I had to mention it. What if some kind soul out there finds Seraphina and decides to drop her off at the office? Fine, even if you're somehow justified in doing that, why did you have to drag Caldwell into it? Posting his picture online like that, isn't that completely illegal? Uncle Aldous, my wife going missing is directly and intimately related to Caldwell. He is the absolute most important clue of all. So of course, I had to put his picture up for the world to see. Besides, isn't he missing now, too? Even your own agency doesn't know where he's hiding. The comrades from the disciplinary committee explicitly said his family can't even contact him, either. And believe me, they are fully panicking. His old man got so heavily stressed out over this that he was actually hospitalized. As for his photo, I just took a quick screenshot right from your agency's official public website. It's all completely public information. I'm certainly not doing this for any kind of profit, so how could you possibly say it's illegal? If you put even half of this devious brainpower into your actual day job, you would definitely be sitting in a much higher chair than me right now. This little draw, the snake out of its hole tactic, was working completely perfectly. I knew for an absolute fact that Aldous was secretly in contact with both Seraphina and Caldwell. Now he absolutely couldn't just sit still anymore. And those other two cheating rats couldn't just keep playing dead, either. If they never showed their cowardly faces and just let things develop on their own, nobody knew just how massive of a crater I was actively going to blow into their ruined lives. The massive PR nightmare from last time had already given them some very serious PTSD, thanks to Vance actively forwarding it across every single WeChat and QQ group under the blazing sun, plus the paid promotion I heavily ran on Weibo. A massive wave of enthusiastic, gossiping netizens quickly started sharing it. The whole situation began to slowly and deliciously ferment. Comments rolled in. How can a mother be this insanely heartless? She doesn't even want her own kid. Damn, why would you even want a toxic woman like this back in your life? Just end the marriage with one clean slash. What are you even keeping her around for? Are you saving her for the holidays? Sisters, who even understands this mess? She ran into a totally toxic guy who just wanted to cheat for fun. Bro, just divorce her already. Bringing back a worn-out shoe like that, doesn't that completely disgust you? The entire internet was practically boiling over with rage. It was a loud, aggressive chorus of pure condemnation against that trashy dumpster fire duo. But, as for actual, usable, useful leads, there wasn't a single damn one. Bright and early the very next day, I received an unexpected phone call straight from the police department. Initially, I totally thought Caldwell had actually called the cops on me. After all, I technically wasn't fully allowed to arbitrarily publish his personal, private information online. Slapping his picture up like that was definitely pushing the very thin boundaries of portrait rights violations. Hello, is this Thorne? You came into our branch yesterday to file an official police report stating your wife ran away from home and couldn't be found anywhere. However, your wife just called us today and firmly stated that she is currently doing just fine. She is absolutely not missing. In fact, she explicitly requested we cancel the case altogether. Therefore, we are calling you to officially verify this. Hello, officer, I replied smoothly, not missing a single beat. I really can't confirm that for sure, officer. She hasn't called home once. I haven't heard her voice at all, and I certainly haven't seen her in person. I have absolutely no idea if the person who called you is just a clever imposter. If you can somehow contact her, or if she reaches out and gets in touch with you guys again, please thoroughly verify her identity. And if it's really her, please absolutely urge her to come home as soon as humanly possible. Our baby isn't even 3 years old yet. He's been crying all day long, and his grandmother's eyes are completely swollen from weeping over him. Want me to just roll over and withdraw the case? Yeah, right. Keep dreaming. You guys think you're so insanely good at hiding, right? Well, go ahead and keep hiding. I want to see exactly how long you two pathetic losers can actually keep this charade up. Smiling, just thinking about this, I confidently topped up another $1,000 directly into my Weibo account and aggressively ran yet another boosted promotion on that missing person post. Isn't your precious little lover's background supposedly rock solid? Well, let's just see if he has the actual power and influence to get my viral missing person notice harmonized and completely scrubbed from the internet. The explosive situation on Weibo just continued to heavily ferment. The angry comments under the post had already easily surpassed 10,000. Honestly, I genuinely didn't expect this crazy level of heat. Could a simple $2,000 promotion really achieve such massive, explosive results? It had barely even been over a single day. Then, on the third day, my ex-monster-in-law finally called me. I naturally figured it would be exactly like all the previous times, and that she was just calling to bitterly curse me out again. Unexpectedly, her tone this time around was eerily, weirdly calm. Are you literally trying to force your own wife to her death? Caldwell's life is completely ruined. He is practically dying out here. Are you finally satisfied now? Why on earth would she die? I quickly retorted with a scoff. She doesn't even have to go to work anymore. She gets to happily stay right by her precious lover's side all day long. Don't you dare tell me how incredibly happy she must be right now. Isn't this exactly the wonderful result she always wanted? People are viciously cursing at her every single day, her mother cried. Her phone is practically blowing up with hate. They don't even stop in the middle of the damn night. Do you seriously want to force my daughter to die? After hearing that pathetic excuse, I just replied coldly and lightly. She brought every single bit of this upon herself. She entirely deserves it. Thorne, don't you have any deep-seated problems of your own? One hand simply cannot clap on its own. What the hell do you even mean? One hand can't clap. Did I force her to go out and cheat on me? Regardless of all that, she is still little Pippin's mother. I stayed dead silent for a brief second before sighing. Then just tell her to turn off her damn phone. You make it sound so incredibly easy. Do you really think she can just turn it off? Her agency is frantically looking for him. The disciplinary committee is hunting high and low, looking for him. Even the police department needs him to officially hand over his work, and they are looking for him too. Then tell him to crawl on back here. We are getting a divorce. Does he even dare to show his face and come back right now? He'd be absolutely cursed to death by the public. Well, that sounds like a you problem, I said flatly. I just want my divorce finalized as soon as humanly possible. If he just keeps hiding like a coward and refusing to show his stupid face, then I swear I'll mobilize this entire country to find him. I slammed the phone down and hung up right before she could start spitting her fragrant, toxic curses at me again. According to my delusional ex-monster-in-law, the entire reason Seraphina cheated in the first place was somehow entirely my fault. Her precious little daughter did absolutely nothing wrong. After all, who told me to not treat her perfect daughter well enough? If you actually bothered to ask her exactly how I didn't treat her daughter well, she'd immediately hit you with this gem. Well, if you truly treated her perfectly, how could she have possibly cheated on you? Wow. What absolute flawless logic. I honestly don't know if she was genuinely clinically delusional or just playing incredibly dumb to save face. Regardless, having any sort of normal, rational communication with that woman was completely and utterly impossible. I honestly thought I had Seraphina and Caldwell pinned to the wall this time. But nope, I gave those scumbags way too much credit. They weren't just sitting around waiting to die. Their next sick little scheme hit me fast. That night, I hopped onto Weibo right before bed, hoping to catch a lucky break or a solid lead. Instead, my inbox was absolutely blowing up. Most of it was just strangers feeling sorry for me and trashing the cheaters. Throw in a little marketing spam, and I had exactly 0 useful clues. I was this close to shutting the app and passing out when a couple of fresh comments under my post made my blood boil. Don't air your dirty laundry in public, one read. The fact that you're milking this drama proves you're a toxic piece of trash, too. You are married, bro. Did you really have to destroy her like this? And the kicker, the baby's mother is dead now. You happy? You literally pushed her to suicide. A garbage dude like you deserve to get cheated on. At first, I just rolled my eyes. I figured it was just paid trolls trying to stir up some drama and muddy the waters. I didn't give it a second thought. But the very next morning, the second my eyes opened, Vance called me. "Fang, man, did your ex-wife jump off a building?" I scoffed. "I have no idea. Are you drunk right now?" "No, bro, I'm dead serious. I had a client today, and his son drives for your ex-wife's agency. Literally everyone at her office is talking about it. They're saying she jumped from a building and killed herself." My brain flatlined. Seraphina wouldn't actually jump, right? Look, I wanted the woman out of my life, but if I actually drove her to suicide, how the hell was I supposed to look my daughter in the eyes when she grew up? "Bro, you need to ask around, right now," Vance urged. "This is a human life, man. This isn't a joke." Hanging up, a cold knot formed in my stomach, but something felt totally off. Think about it. If she had actually taken a nosedive off a roof, my ex-monster-in-law would have blown up my phone by now. Seraphina was Pippin's mother. If she was dead, her kid would absolutely have to be at the funeral. But that crazy old bat hadn't called to harass me in days. Holy crap, she was faking it. She was playing the ultimate tragic victim card to weaponize the internet against me. The sick brilliance of their scheme finally clicked in my head. In our culture, the dead get absolute respect, no questions asked. Unless you're some world-class, universally hated supervillain, dying pretty much wipes your slate clean. So, with Seraphina supposedly dead, me posting her dirty laundry online made me look like a relentless monster disrespecting a corpse. I hated to admit it, but Seraphina played this fake death sympathy card flawlessly. She took a step back just to slit my throat in the press. Just like that, she completely flipped the internet's narrative. Vance sent me a flood of WeChat screenshots, and it was brutal. Dozens of massive group chats were tearing me apart. They were calling me a piece of trash, saying I drove my wife to suicide and left a poor, innocent 3-year-old girl without a mother. This explosive rumor backed me into a corner fast. I was getting crucified online, buried under an avalanche of hate. But I forced myself to take a breath and steady my nerves. My thirst for revenge was made of titanium. I didn't care what a bunch of keyboard warriors thought. I was going to keep exposing her, and I wouldn't leave a single stone unturned. Besides, Seraphina hadn't actually jumped. No matter how wildly a rumor spreads online, it's still just a rumor. Without cold, hard facts, it's nothing but hot air. I marched right back onto Weibo, found the most highly liked hate comment, and replied directly. "Oh really? When did this happen? Did anyone even call the cops? Why hasn't her own family received a single notification? If the police and her parents don't know she's dead, how exactly do you know? You say I forced my wife to jump, that I'm a monster who won't let her rest in peace." That original hate comment had over 1,000 likes. But after I dropped that logic bomb, my reply skyrocketed to over 50,000 likes. Fake is fake, and the internet always sniffs out a rat. The masses saw right through her garbage, and thousands of netizens started flooding the thread. "If she has the guts, tell her to jump for real," one wrote. "A cheater like her isn't a tragedy anyway. The pavement is exactly where she belongs." And my personal favorite, "Let us know when she actually jumps. I'll live stream it to the whole network." The internet was absolutely boiling over, but despite the hype, I still hadn't found a single usable lead. It was all noise and no substance, and it was starting to make me seriously anxious. Plus, my personal life was getting hit by a relentless streak of bad luck. I was getting hammered from all sides, forcing me to shift my energy back to my job and my family. My daughter just turned 3 and was completely developing a mind of her own. She was getting harder and harder to manage by the day. Meanwhile, my dad had been transferred to 2 different hospitals, but his health just wasn't improving. Honestly, if it weren't for this massive pile of toxic drama tying me down, I would have taken him to Crestview City for elite treatment a long time ago. Then, to make things worse, while my mom was taking Pippin out to the playground, she got shoved from behind by some bratty, 7-year-old menace. My mom's only instinct was to protect her grandbaby, so she took the fall, slamming headfirst into a solid metal jungle gym. And she didn't just split her head open. She got a severe concussion and was hospitalized for an entire week. So there I was, juggling 2 sick parents and a toddler at home. I was so insanely busy, I literally didn't have a second to catch my breath. Even the higher-ups at my agency couldn't handle the online pressure anymore. One by one, they pulled me into their offices, telling me to drop the revenge act, settle down, and just start a new life. To top it all off, the tens of thousands of shares in stocks I bought absolutely tanked, crashing by a brutal 70%. I was honestly in awe of my own misery. You know that saying, when your luck is down, you could break a tooth just drinking water? Yeah, that was my life right now. But eventually, even the most cursed streak of bad luck has to break. One afternoon, I was deep cleaning the house, shoving all of Seraphina's old junk into garbage bags, when I stumbled across an old smartphone shoved in the back of a cabinet. I instantly recognized it. It was my sister-in-law Elowen's old phone. Back in 2019, Seraphina and I took a couple's trip to Phuket. Elowen's family took Pippin off our hands for a few days, even taking her all the way to Chengdu to see the pandas. I knew they had spent a ton of money on that trip, so I told Seraphina to buy Elowen the newest fruit brand phone as a thank you gift. Elowen's old iPhone was handed down to the ex-monster-in-law, but the old bat couldn't figure out the iOS system to save her life, so the phone just ended up shoved in a drawer, collecting dust. Just thinking back to that year, to that supposedly romantic trip to Phuket, made me want to projectile vomit. Elowen and her mom genuinely had good intentions. They watched our kids so we could basically have a second honeymoon. But looking back, man, even then, I could feel that something was deeply, fundamentally wrong with Seraphina. Logically, a kid-free vacation to a gorgeous tropical beach, her absolute dream destination, by the way, should have had her jumping for joy. Instead, she was completely checked out, zero enthusiasm. Forget about intimacy. We barely even held hands the entire time. She wore this cold, dead expression for the whole trip, acting like she was forced to travel with a complete stranger. We even stayed at the Banyan Tree. Back when we lived in Crestview City, that luxury chain was her absolute obsession. A 5-star suite with a breathtaking ocean view was exactly her vibe. But whenever I tried to lean in or initiate anything, she'd ice me out with one sentence. I'm too tired, let's just go to sleep. It wasn't until this whole cheating scandal blew up in my face that the pieces finally clicked. During that trip, she was knee-deep in the honeymoon phase of her sickening affair with Caldwell. Staring at the dusty phone in my hands, a wave of melancholy hit me. This thing held photos from a time before Seraphina became a monster. I figured I'd boot it up and take a trip down memory lane, so I plugged it in. But what I absolutely never saw coming was that this little piece of junk would hand me a massive, game-changing discovery, instantly smashing my dead-end investigation wide open. After juicing up, the screen glowed to life. It barely had any apps, just WeChat and TikTok. The ex-monster-in-law only used it to doom-scroll videos and text. My thumb hovered over the screen, and I clicked open the photo gallery. There were actually a ton of pictures on there. Shots of our little family of 3, Elowen's family, and big group photos the old lady took of all of us together. As I scrolled through the happy, smiling faces, a massive wave of emotion caught me right in the throat. Before I even realized it, my eyes were tearing up. To think that a perfectly happy family, a family that had absolutely everything, could just shatter into a million pieces like it meant nothing. I guess that's just the cruel unpredictability of life. The rain falls, and people move on. There are so many things in this world we can't even control for ourselves, let alone for anyone else. Shaking it off, I swiped over to the second home screen. There was only one single app sitting there. A cloud storage app. I chuckled to myself. Look at the old lady, getting all tech-savvy. I casually tapped the icon, and my jaw almost hit the floor. The album was showing recent updates. In a flash, it all made sense. This account still belonged to my sister-in-law, Elowen. She had never actually logged out. Even better, this old phone was actively syncing and giving me a front-row seat to every single photo in her private cloud drive. And guys, there were thousands of them. Most of the files were recent uploads from the last few months. I scrolled past pictures of Seraphina, my cheating wife, and her lover Elowen smiling together at the entrance of some zoo. But hold on a second. I narrowed my eyes, leaning closer to the screen. This definitely was not our local zoo. The gates looked completely different. The photo purposely only showed the word zoo. Whatever city name came before it was completely cropped out. My blood boiled as I dug deeper into the cloud drive. Finally, a screenshot of a medical receipt gave her away. It was a record for a hospital checkup. The second hospital of Briarcliff, patient name, Seraphina. It all clicked into place. After she was supposedly hauled away in an ambulance that day, she never spent a single night in our local hospital. The very next morning, she had practically fled to Elowen's place in Briarcliff. No wonder her vanishing act was so flawless. She had totally abandoned this city and all the chaos she caused. But luckily for me, Elowen was obsessed with taking pictures. That cloud drive was an absolute goldmine of evidence. It even had pictures of those two snakes having dinner with my terrible ex-monster-in-law's family over in Briarcliff. It also proved that Seraphina had ditched her old spot and settled into a brand new hiding place. Thanks to a photo of a shipping label under Elowen's name, I had Seraphina's exact, detailed address. This was a massive, game-changing breakthrough. I smirked, opened up WeChat, and fired a text straight to my ex-monster-in-law. It has been months. How much longer is your pathetic family going to hide? Tell Seraphina to get her act together, come back, and sign these divorce papers. After that, we go our separate ways. She can rot wherever she wants, with whoever she wants. Her miserable life will not have a single dime's worth of connection to me. Message sent. I stared at the screen for 10 agonizing minutes. Absolutely zero response. I do not have the time or the patience to play this waiting game with you cowards. Hurry up and drag her back for the divorce. Still nothing. My anger spiked. Fine, if they wanted to play dead, it was time for my ultimate move. I copied their exact, secret address, pasted it into the chat, and hit send. This address is correct, right? Since Seraphina refuses to come back, I guess I will just have to hand-deliver the divorce papers to her front door. The literal second that message delivered, my phone buzzed. What is the meaning of this? What are you trying to do? I actually laughed out loud. See? It is not that people cannot reply to your texts. It is that they view you as a helpless clown throwing a pathetic tantrum. But the absolute second you grab them by the throat, they reply faster than lightning. Oh, nothing special. Just tell Seraphina to carve out some time to come back and finalize this divorce. Oh, and she needs to head over to the disciplinary committee to explain her little situation. If she keeps dodging me and hiding like a rat, then I will have no choice but to take a nice little trip to Briarcliff and drag her out myself. Just to really sell the threat, I logged on to the 12306 National Railway website, faked booking a high-speed rail ticket to Briarcliff for tomorrow, snapped a screenshot of the checkout page, and sent it over. I am asking for the last time, is Seraphina coming back for this divorce or not? Before I could even bring up the divorce papers again, the old bat stopped typing. Instead, a voice memo popped up. Thorne, what exactly do you want from us? Seraphina literally cannot go back right now. She is incredibly sick, severe clinical depression. She has been seeing a psychiatrist at the neurology department. I paused, recalling the medical receipt I had just dug out of the cloud drive. Surprisingly, her story actually lined up with the evidence, so my cheating wife actually went crazy. Honestly, I already knew she was cracking. Just yesterday morning, Elowen had dragged her to the neurology department to get checked out. Oh, really? Is my dear wife seriously ill? Do you need me to come over there and take a look at her? If her brain is that damaged, I can gladly take her to Crestview or the capital for some proper treatment. I fired that off as a voice memo. The words my dear wife were practically dripping with venom through my gritted teeth. Even I felt a chill down my spine listening to it playback, so I could only imagine how my ex-monster-in-law felt. When she replied, her voice was shaking uncontrollably. Don't you dare do anything crazy to her. Human nature really is a hilarious thing. When you have no power, your rage just makes you look like a barking dog. But the second you can actually destroy them, your smile becomes the ultimate weapon, striking pure, paralyzing terror into their hearts. Mom, look at what you are saying. Why in the world would I do anything crazy? My precious wife is sick. I have a duty to come over there and take good care of her. Oh, wait, I get it. Does my wife want me to bring her lover Caldwell along with me? I hit send, slapping a creepy little smiley face emoji right at the end. Deep down, my heart was still bleeding from her betrayal, but on the outside, I was wearing a sick, twisted smile. Yeah, I was laughing. Seraphina was once the woman I would have died for. Whenever she caught so much as a cold, I never left her side, terrified she would not bounce back perfectly. But this time, I was not going to play the doting husband. I was going to mock her relentlessly. Hell, I was going to throw massive rocks straight down the well she had thrown herself into. A dark part of me wished she would just drop dead from her depression, but another lingering part was terrified she might actually end her own life. It was a sick, twisted headspace to be in, and I genuinely did not know what was wrong with me anymore. I guess I still had a long way to go before I crushed my inner demons. The chat went completely dead for a long time. I was just typing up another text to poke the bear, when boom. My ex-monster-in-law spammed me with pictures of outpatient medical records, followed by a stack of official psychiatric evaluation forms. Then came the grand finale. A picture of a huge plastic bag absolutely stuffed with heavy prescription pill bottles. Look for yourself. These all belong to Seraphina. She is genuinely sick. She absolutely cannot travel back right now. Are you trying to force my daughter to commit suicide? I scoffed. Well, you should have just said so earlier. I know the perfect, foolproof cure for her little disease. Just find her a fresh new lover. Boom, depression totally cured. If one is not enough, we can toss another woman into the mix. Would clearing her garbage reputation and throwing a pile of cash at her do the trick? My ex-monster-in-law went radio silent. Even the most shameless people care about their bruised pride. You cannot withstand that level of brutally sarcastic mockery, especially when your family was 100% in the wrong to begin with. Tell your daughter to find the time to come back and sign these divorce papers. Otherwise, do not blame me when I do something truly insane to her. I was already charging up my ultimate attack, preparing to hit Seraphina with a devastating pay cut at work. It would absolutely shatter her ego and completely bankrupt her. Now that I had a rock-solid revenge plan for my cheating wife, I went online, did my homework, and locked in the legal details. Then, I dialed up Uncle Aldous. Uncle Aldous, long time, no talk. How have you been holding up lately? Aldous choked on his words, completely stunned for a second. Long time, no talk? Was it your evil twin brother who called and harassed me the day before yesterday? Cut the crap, kid. Speak, what do you want now? Are you trying to stab your Uncle Aldous in the back again? Honestly, just seeing my caller ID probably gave the old man a blinding migraine. He desperately wanted to block me, but he was absolutely terrified to ignore my calls. If he provoked me, there was no telling what kind of nuclear bomb I would drop on his agency next. The trauma of our last little scandal spinning totally out of control was still fresh in his mind. He absolutely did not have the guts to repeat that public nightmare. How could you say that, Uncle Aldous? I just wanted to ask you a super quick question. When an employee takes a months-long medical leave from your agency, do they strictly need a hospitalization certificate? I knew his agency had moved mountains to cover for Seraphina and her lover Caldwell during this whole cheating scandal. But here was the kicker. Seraphina was hiding out in Briarcliff, only seeing doctors at a private outpatient clinic. Most importantly, she had absolutely never been admitted to a hospital. So, in that case, how the hell did her massive, months-long medical leave actually get approved? You would have to think I was a total idiot to believe there was not some shady backroom bribery going on. Yes, that is our agency's strict regulation. Does Seraphina have a hospitalization certificate? Uncle Aldous stammered. Seraphina is. She is indeed very sick. She is currently receiving intense medical treatment at a hospital. I laughed to myself. I asked a simple yes or no question about a hospitalization certificate, and he started dodging. It was a glaring admission of guilt. Uncle Aldous, I am sending you a screenshot right now. I need your agency to give me a very reasonable explanation for this. Otherwise, I am going to have to file another colorful little complaint straight to the disciplinary committee. I slammed the send button, shooting him the screenshot of Seraphina's outpatient registration in Briarcliff. Uncle Aldous, I also have the exact diagnostic notes written by her private doctor. I even know every single psychiatric pill she was prescribed. This is bulletproof evidence that Seraphina was never, ever hospitalized. I just have to ask, who exactly bypassed the rules and approved her paid medical leave for the past few months? I didn't know the exact corporate laws, so I had looked them up before calling. Seraphina's little stunt directly classified as a major violation, a literal crime of fraudulently obtaining company funds. Your agency clearly knew she was faking it, yet you still covered for her. According to the employment laws I am looking at, your entire agency should be slammed with a formal warning. The executives in charge and anyone who rubber-stamped this should be hit with major permanent demerits. If the fraud is severe, they face demotion. If it is extremely severe, immediate, outright termination. Look, it was simple. Seraphina and her agency were breaking the law, and they damn well knew it. But I wasn't born yesterday. I knew that rules are just rules, and reality plays by a completely different script. The law sets the boundaries, sure, but it rarely cures the actual disease. Living in this massive, messy system, I already knew all the unspoken rules of the game. When times are peaceful and everyone is playing nice, the agency just turns a blind eye. Everyone smiles, everyone wins. But right now, at this critical boiling point, since I already caught you dead to rights, I'm so sorry, but we are doing things strictly by the book. If not, I'd dragged the whole lot of them down to the disciplinary committee myself. It had been a few days since I last saw Director Joe, and honestly, I kinda missed the guy. Thorne, don't do anything crazy, he had told me. I am going to verify this right now. If it turns out Seraphina wasn't actually hospitalized, she won't just lose her paycheck. Every single dime of that illegal income she banked over the last few months? We are clawing it all back. Aldous wasn't messing around. This kind of shady setup was basically the agency's dirty little secret, an under-the-table perk. If this got dragged into the public spotlight, the entire agency would go up in flames. I swapped a few more polite pleasantries with him, keeping my cool. I promised I wouldn't pull any reckless stunts and would wait for his investigation to wrap up. Honestly, all she had to do was come back and finalize our divorce. Then she could march down to the committee, explain herself, and we could finally go our separate ways. She could walk her own miserable path, and I'd walk my sunny road. Wouldn't that be nice? But no, she just had to keep dragging it out. She was still clinging to this delusional fantasy of getting her cushy government job back. Well, if she wanted to play it like that, she couldn't blame me for burning her bank account to the ground. Let's see how long she can stay in hiding with zero income. Aldous worked crazy fast this time, hitting me back that exact same afternoon. Boom. Seraphina and Caldwell's salaries were completely slashed. On top of that, the agency initiated a brutal clawback for 7 months of their dirty money. Caldwell actually managed to fake a hospital certificate from a Tier 3 hospital, but the guy never spent a single second in a hospital bed. Their agency was terrified I already held the smoking gun, so they froze his paycheck too. Honestly, their agency was absolutely terrified of my tactics. If I wasn't blasting videos or posting on social media, I was storming into the disciplinary committee 1 second and marching into the police station the next. Forget Uncle Aldous, even the top boss of their agency was sweating bullets under the pressure. They kept taking my agency's leaders out for fancy dinners, begging them to make me stop wreaking havoc. But my bosses were totally helpless, too. I didn't care about climbing the corporate ladder, and I definitely didn't care about some weak agency bonus. They couldn't suppress me, and they couldn't fire me. Faced with a guy who literally had zero desires and zero vulnerabilities, they had absolutely zero leverage. Every single boss, except for Old Ren and Sister May, had pulled me aside for a private chat. I just looked them in the eye and made one demand: to give me justice. They were completely stumped. That was a justice they simply couldn't give. But now that the agency froze her pay and demanded all that illegal cash back, Seraphina, whose income was pretty pathetic to begin with, was suddenly choked off from her only lifeline. She didn't just have to pay for her own fake medical treatments out of pocket. She had to cover her own social security, too, throw rent into that messy equation, and her cushy life was suddenly dragging at an agonizing, brutal crawl. The ex-monster-in-law's phone call came through almost instantly. "Thorne, are you even human? Are you seriously not going to be satisfied until you drive my daughter to her grave? How can you be so cold-blooded? Are you really trying to push Seraphina over the edge?" I didn't even let the old hag finish her hysterical screaming. "Mom," I cut in, my voice as dead and emotionless as a stagnant pond. "I didn't invent the agency's rules. I didn't force Seraphina to fake her medical leave, and I sure as hell didn't force her to sleep with a married man. If having to pay back stolen government money is what pushes her over the edge, then her moral compass was completely shattered long before I ever got involved. You are a monster, Thorne. You're going to kill her," she sobbed. All that arrogant pride was totally drained from her voice, replaced by nothing but sheer, raw panic. "No," I replied softly. "I'm just a concerned citizen reporting a violation to the proper authorities. If Seraphina wants this nightmare to end, she knows exactly what she needs to do. Bring those divorce papers straight to the Civil Affairs Bureau in Ashwood City. Until then, my phone is completely off limits to your entire family." I hung up, blocked her number, and tossed my phone right onto the sofa. For the first time in months, that crushing weight on my chest felt just a fraction lighter. Let me tell you, financial ruin is one hell of a teacher. You can fake depression, you can hide behind your mommy's skirts, and you can play the helpless victim all day long, but you cannot fake a bank balance. With 7 months of salary clawed back and her current income sitting at absolutely zero, Seraphina's cozy little hideaway in Briarcliff was ticking like a massive time bomb. But the real beauty of this move? It wasn't just about squeezing Seraphina. It was about what it would do to her passionate little romance with Caldwell. A week ticked by. The gears of bureaucracy turned pretty slow, but when they finally grind, They absolutely crush everything in their path. It was a Tuesday afternoon when old Vance barged into my office, his face literally glowing with malicious glee. "Brother, you absolute mastermind." Vance slammed a printed screenshot right onto my desk. "Grab some popcorn, man. The dumpster fire duo is officially tearing each other apart." I picked up the paper. It was a forwarded message from an internal agency group chat, leaked by one of Vance's inside contacts. It was a long, incredibly pathetic manifesto written by Caldwell himself. Under the excruciating pressure of the disciplinary committee's investigation and his frozen bank accounts, Caldwell had completely cracked. In the message, he claimed he was deeply remorseful and had just been temporarily blinded by Seraphina's relentless seduction. He threw her under the bus so hard, it must have left tire marks on her soul. The guy painted himself as the poor victim of her ambitious scheming, claiming she used her looks to coerce him into getting her that logistics manager spot. I couldn't even help it. I laughed out loud, a harsh, barking laugh that echoed around the small office. "A match made in heaven," I sneered. "Oh, but here's the best part," Vance added, leaning against my desk. Caldwell's wife finally snapped. Turns out, she was totally fine turning a blind eye, as long as the money kept flowing and his cushy job was secure. But now that his paycheck is frozen and he's facing getting fired, she marched right into the agency yesterday and slapped Caldwell so hard in the lobby, the guy literally lost a tooth. The top boss is absolutely furious. Caldwell's career is officially a smoking crater. "Good," I said, my eyes turning dead cold. "But it's not over until the papers are signed." It only took 3 more days for Seraphina's psychological defenses to completely shatter. The illusion of her grand, passionate romance was destroyed by Caldwell's public betrayal, and her bank accounts were bleeding dry. On a dreary, overcast Friday morning, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "I'm at the Ashwood City Civil Affairs Bureau. Bring the papers." I didn't feel a massive rush of victory. I didn't even feel angry anymore. I just felt this overwhelming, heavy sense of exhaustion. I took a half day off from work, grabbed the meticulously drafted divorce agreement I had been carrying in my briefcase for months, and drove straight to the bureau. When I walked into that lobby, I almost didn't recognize her. The Seraphina sitting on that cheap plastic chair was an absolute ghost of the woman who used to complain about the thread count of our bedsheets. Her hair was dull, tied back in a messy, greasy knot. She had lost so much weight that her cheekbones looked painfully sharp and hollow. The expensive designer clothes she used to flaunt were gone, replaced by a wrinkled, oversized trench coat. She looked up at me, her eyes bloodshot and completely hollow. There was zero defiance left in her, just the empty, broken gaze of someone who gambled their entire life away and lost every single chip. I sat down across from her and slid the folder over the table. Point 1. You leave with absolutely nothing. Point 2. Full custody of Pippin goes to me. Your visitation rights are strictly conditional on your mental stability and your lifestyle. Point 3. Zero financial support from me to cover your debts or your clawbacks. I recited the terms like a cold, mechanical robot. Her violently trembling hands picked up the pen. She just stared at the paper for a long time. A single tear dropped onto the ink, smudging the word agreement. "Thorne," she whispered, her voice completely cracking. Caldwell, he said he loved me. He promised we would build a life together once he got his promotion." I looked at her, feeling absolutely nothing. The opposite of love isn't hate, man. It's pure indifference. Did you honestly expect loyalty from a man who cheated on his own wife during their honeymoon phase? I asked, my voice totally stripped of any pity. You traded a family that worshipped the ground you walked on for a pig who just saw you as a cheap stepping stone. Sign the paper, Seraphina. She let out a choked, ugly sob, gripping the pen so tightly, her knuckles turned bone white. Tell Pippin, she started, but her voice completely failed her. I will tell Pippin that his mother loved him, but she had to go far away for a very long time, I said firmly. I won't poison his innocent mind with your sins, but I will protect him from your chaos. With a violently shaking hand, she finally signed her name on the dotted line. The clerk processed the paperwork without a word. 30 minutes later, we were handed the 2 dark red divorce certificates, a brutal decade of shared history, legally severed and reduced to one single hollow stamp. We walked out of the Civil Affairs Bureau and stopped on the concrete steps. The heavy, overcast sky had finally broken, and a few bright rays of sunlight were piercing right through the miserable gray clouds. Seraphina just stood there, fiercely clutching her red divorce booklet, looking completely and utterly lost. She had absolutely no job, zero money, a a totally ruined reputation, and now, not a shred of family left. Now, she had to drag herself across town to face the disciplinary committee and explain her fake medical leave, a pathetic battle she was absolutely guaranteed to lose. "Take care of yourself, Thorne," she whispered, her voice trembling, not even daring to look me in the eye. I didn't give her a reply. I simply turned my back, walked straight to my car, and drove away without checking my rearview mirror even a single time. You see, my revenge wasn't some massive cinematic explosion. It was a slow, incredibly methodical dismantling of every single lie they had ever built their miserable lives upon. Later that exact evening, I sat peacefully on the living room floor, assembling the Ultraman Zero action figure that Elwyn had bought for Pippin a few weeks ago. "Daddy, the arm goes right there." Pippin giggled happily, his tiny, chubby hands trying his absolute hardest to help me push the stubborn plastic joint perfectly into place. "You're right, buddy." "You are so smart," I smiled warmly, gently ruffling his hair. Just then, my mom walked out of the kitchen carrying a fresh plate of sliced apples. The ugly bandage on her forehead was finally gone, leaving nothing but a faint, light pink scar behind. Over in the corner, my dad was sitting in his favorite armchair, quietly sipping his hot tea, looking way more relaxed than he had in months. Suddenly, my phone buzzed loudly on the wooden coffee table. It was a text message from Aldous. Director Joe from the disciplinary committee just officially took over Caldwell's entire case. They found some incredibly severe financial irregularities tied to his dirty past favors. It is officially out of our agency's hands now. The police are fully involved. That scumbag is looking at serious prison time. I quietly read the message, locked my screen, and placed the phone face down. Honestly, I didn't even care anymore. Whether Caldwell rots away in a cold jail cell or Seraphina spends the rest of her miserable life paying back her mountains of debt in some rundown, Tier 3 town, their pathetic story had officially concluded in the chapters of my life. The massive bureaucratic storm I had summoned would continue to violently rage, entirely tearing down the rotten foundations they stood on, but it was no longer my storm to weather. "Daddy, look! Ultraman beat the bad monster." Pippin cheered at the top of his lungs, triumphantly holding the toy high up in the air. I pulled my little boy into a deeply tight hug, inhaling the sweet scent of his baby shampoo, feeling the steady, incredibly innocent beating of his tiny heart right against my chest. "Yeah, kiddo, he sure did," I whispered softly, closing my eyes as a truly profound, unshakable peace finally settled deep over my tired soul. The monster is finally gone. It is just us now, and I promise you, we are going to live a really, really good life.